I see the whiteboard okay. Do you guys read that back there at all?
No, it's kind of white hot.
Oh, yeah. Oh, there it goes.
A little bit
There
better.
it is. A little bit better, yeah.
What's going on? Good to see.
Yeah, a little better. Okay. It needs to be a little closer.
We can, but is that better, Anthony?
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Cool.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you all for joining us here, 9 a.m. Wednesday, last week of July, one of the biggest months of the year. So we are intentionally taking some time out of our schedule and everybody's schedule today to invest into you. And we've got a lot of good stuff today. So I hope you got your pens, your notepads, you're ready to take some notes, and hopefully have some follow-up questions for your managers as well as Dan and I. For those that haven't met me, I think I've met most of you now, but I'm Greg Mullis. I'm the manager of corporate operations. So I work directly with the managing partners in our 4 corporate locations. And then if you haven't met, this is Dan Whalen, if you want to introduce yourself as well.
Yep, I think I met everybody on here as well. Accidentally called Isaiah the other day because I thought I was calling Tina, and got to know him pretty well in a short period there. But director of operations, so work hand in hand with Greg, and really excited to bring you guys, a bit of kind of over the top knowledge that we otherwise wouldn't really get, based on Greg and I's experience, and depending on whether you're looking to close more estimates, more junk jobs, sell more supplies on moves, and ultimately just influence people in general. These are all very, very relevant points that we're going to go over today. So we're going to send out a handout after the meeting today, but please, for retention purposes, document the notes yourself, write it down. You're going to increase your retention rate by at least 10 or 20% just by the act of writing it down. So feel free to call out questions if you didn't pick something up or you want more clarification on something as we roll, but we will send out a handout after the fact.
Awesome. Thanks, Nant. So hopefully you guys can see this on the board, but 2 big buckets that we're going to cover today. And I know you guys can see it in the room. So we're first going to talk about the inner game, that inner mindset. What are the things internally that we need to be focusing on, dialed into, in tune with both ourselves as well as with, the client or the customer that we're dealing with. So we're going to go over some strategies for that. And then second, we're going to go over some mechanics. That's more of the tactical, the steps, so to speak, from start to end of an estimate and really executing at a high level. And really these steps and everything we're going to talk about today is completely transferable no matter what you're selling. So yes, we may be gearing this more specifically to doing estimates, but this is transferable if you're a junk captain out on a job, following these steps, especially the inner game as well. This is transferable if I'm a captain out on operating a move. These steps will be very beneficial for you. So we're going to hit both the mindset, the inner game, as well as the actual tactical step by step. These are the things that we have to do in the process in order to effectively get from point A to point B, which is closing the deal, getting the job booked on the calendar, having a happy, excited customer. They're looking forward to working with us. So you guys all cool with that? Give us some thumbs up if you are and you're ready to take some notes and learn and have a good time over this next 55 minutes or so, okay?
You want to kind of go bounce back and forth?
Yeah, you want to kick us off with
Yeah.
number 1?
Sure. All right, so number 1, so we're going to tackle the inner game first. And what I mean by inner game is basically how are you thinking about what you're doing? So there's ultimately what we do in terms of selling, but that does not matter if we are not thinking about how we want to act and where it's all coming from. So there's a few points that we just want to just get out of the way first. Okay. Number 1 is your tone and how you're speaking, your body language, and then your own self-perception. Okay. So this is all nonverbal, which is really important to get because there's a sale happening moment by moment by moment by moment. And either it is you are getting validation from the prospect or who you're working with that you are up to the task, or we're sending nonverbal messages and cues that we are not, right? It's the contrary. So how we're speaking, the tone of our voice, right? Are we upbeat? Are we down? Are we stuttering? Are we confident? Are we using inflection in our voice? This is all stuff to just take notice of, listen to yourself. And if you're actually really serious about getting better at sales, record yourself doing mock presentations and listen back to how you sound. Ask yourself, would I buy from me? And be radically honest with yourself, because if we can't get there, if we're just kidding ourselves and we think that selling is all circumstantial based on what's in front of us and having to have a perfect situation, we're going to be screwed, because we wouldn't have salespeople if that was the case. It would just be, hey, serve it up on a silver platter and it's like online. It's either yes or no, click of the button. We wouldn't have salespeople. So salespeople's job is to take somebody from being uncertain to certain. How do we do that? We need to start off by putting ourselves in the best position to be successful. And that starts with the nonverbal stuff, like having good tone of voice, body language, standing up straight. I'm going to even go down to appearance. Do you feel confident showing up to the home? Do you feel like you belong in that conversation with someone who may have, a Porsche or Jaguar or whatever in the driveway, right? These are some very, very high-end homes that our clients are living in and we're coming to service. So do you feel like you're in the conversation? The same way that you would do yourself a favor if you were single and looking to date. Why do people work out? Well, they work out for health purposes, but usually the team members that we have, they're looking to put ourselves in a better position to be successful on dates, right? So it's something that people can notice about you, that wow, that person's really in shape. You're doing yourself a favor before you even open your mouth. There's a transferable state of that with sales. Are we showing up with a clean shirt, run an iron through it, tuck it in, stand up straight, have matching belt and shoes? All these little things send a message that I'm serious about what I'm doing. And that carries through in your speech, in your tone, in your confidence level, and ultimately that self-perception, right? Do you feel like what you're doing, that you are actually following through on your truth? Or is this something to where you feel like kind of an imposter, like I really don't know what I'm doing, I'm really like unsure, and at the end of the day I'm just hoping to God that I don't get a no, or the client just blows me off? These are all thoughts that are normal, but you need to deal with them before you actually get far down the road with the prospect. Okay, so tone, body language, self-perception. How much pride do you have about yourself before we even get to the point to be even thinking about the product or the service that we're providing? Okay. Number two.
Yep, definitely. So number two, go ahead and write it on the board. Number two is, how in tune are you with the customer and really what they're after, what their goals are, what they're looking to accomplish. So write this up here. We'll just put being.
Do you want to use blue?
Yeah, that's good. We'll keep the consistency and see that better. So being in tune with the customer. Sorry, that's a with sign there. Sorry, guys. So what does that mean? Being in tune with the customer. Think about like Dan just mentioned, the whole working out thing. And I think about like cycling. You ever heard like, hey, I need a tune up with my bike? Like you're on your bike. It's just not like you feel it. It's just not, it doesn't feel right. And when we're in interactions with customers, with team members, whether that be, in an estimate or on a junk job or a move, whatever it is, you can feel like, all right, we're in tune, we're aligned, we're in rhythm, or we're not in rhythm. Like there's something that's holding us back from really being able to move forward and really get in alignment. So how in tune are we with our customers? Are we listening to what they're saying, right? Are we actively listening, or do we just hear, but in our mind, we're over here thinking, all right, I need to accomplish X, Y, and Z, and we're not really paying attention to what they're saying? Because 90% of the time, customers will tell you how to sell them, how to close them if we're listening. They will tell you through, sometimes it's through this stuff, right? When you're walking around the house and their eyeballs light up at the china cabinet or at the table or whatever. Sometimes they don't verbally say it, but it comes through in their body language or in their tone or in their voice fluctuations when they start talking about specific pieces of furniture. So that's why we have to be completely in tune with not just the words that are coming out of their mouth, but their body language, their tone. And we have to actively listen. We need to know what's important to them. If it's a china cabinet that's really important to them, I need to make a mental note, write it down, put it in your iPad, that's a trigger for them. That's something that's important. That's something that at the end of the day, I'm going to be hitting on in my pitch to make sure that we're really taking care of those specific items. So we've got to make sure that we're listening, we're asking the right questions so that we can get in complete alignment. Because if there's that friction, then ultimately when it comes down to closing the deal, asking for them to book on the calendar, there's probably going to be some hesitation to do that. And they're going to want to shop around, think about it, talk to whoever, and it ultimately likely won't end up in a book job if we have that friction. So we got to make sure we're in tune with our clients. Okay.
Good stuff. Yeah, really, that it goes down to how well are you able to put yourself in their shoes. So everybody has a way that they respond to, but you're not going to know that without asking the right questions. So be very, very intentional about the questions that you ask, because again, this is how well can you put yourself in the client's shoes and then cater to those things that you would respond to normally. Number 3, I want to put priming. Okay. Priming. What does that mean? Back on working out, right? Warm-ups, right? You've heard of warming up. Why do you warm up? Get ready. Yeah. You don't go right into 405 on the squat bar, right? You're going to blow out your knee. You need to warm up your body and get ready for what you're doing. So Greg and I, in our past life, we in the gym business, we used to do what was called a warm up or a tune up prezo, right? Short for presentation, to really shake off the rust. So first thing in the morning, salespeople would get into the gym. It'd be before anybody's showing up for tours and things like that. But we would go ahead and role play, right, with each other. This would be like 8 in the morning, mock tours, right? And you basically just want to shake off any of the cobwebs left over from your drive in, or maybe you woke up late and maybe you just didn't have that time to prepare. But be smart about that, because again, if you really seriously take your job and hold it at the utmost level of importance and pride, which we hope that everybody does. And if we don't, then that's a different conversation for a different day. However, if you do take it seriously, you don't want to, again, get underneath a squat bar with 405. We want to start with something manageable, get the blood flowing, right? Get that language going, get those mechanics just shaken off, that first one of the day. And a lot of you might notice that if you've done junk jobs, back to back to back to back, or estimates back to back to back to back, by the 3rd or 4th estimate, you feel a lot more comfortable in that first one of the day. The first one of the day is always a little bit whatever, but we can address that by doing those things in advance, right? Even down to the point of when you're driving and you're on the way to the first job of the day, or the first estimate of the day. What are you listening to? What are you putting in your head? Do you have different things that would help you either get in a better emotional state or give you some, tips and tricks to throw in there throughout your presentation, like a sales training podcast or something of that sort, YouTube videos, whatever. Again, we don't need to get like crazy detailed, but just something to feed your unconscious mind so that when you do show up, things naturally come out of your mouth that are going to help you, versus all I did was just blast a bunch of, really, really, really heavy rap music first thing in the morning. And then I showed up to the customer's house, and then I walk in and I'm like, I feel like I'm in a different country. Not good. Okay. The workday starts when you wake up and you start to put your clothes on. So that's the thing that we need to keep in mind when we sell, because priming absolutely does make a difference. Think again of the warm-up analogy. It absolutely rings true. So do not sleep on that one.
Absolutely. And just to even add to that, all that stuff is so important, because your emotional state going into those estimates is absolutely critical. But one of the best ways to change your emotional state is to change your physical state. So even getting up in the morning and actually doing some sort of physical warm up, like Dan mentioned, riding your bike, getting a run in, a walk, a jog, push-ups, lifting, whatever it is, we do something physical. If you guys ever seen the Tony Robbins, you guys know who Tony Robbins is? You ever seen that Netflix episode where it's one of his events and he's backstage? He is jumping up and down a little mini trampoline. He does it for like 5 minutes right before he goes on stage to prepare his physical mind, and it elevates his emotional state. Like that's what Dan's talking about. Like we have to prime our bodies and our minds to be in the right state of mind so that as soon as I hit that doorstep, I'm ready to go. I'm not sluggish. I'm not thinking about, oh, let me remind myself, what are the factors of the move? Oh man, I didn't have time to read through or listen to all, and we'll talk more about that. But make sure we're doing our due diligence in the priming. So number 4 is professionalism. So is Dan kind of alluded to this earlier, but how are we showing up on that doorstep? Are we showing up looking sharp, crisp, like a true professional? Are we in uniform? Are we standing tall? Are we smiling? I don't know if you guys can see it, but I'm smiling. I know I got my hat on. It's see that big Max smile. Are we smiling? Do we look happy? Do we look like a professional? Or do I look like I just rolled out of the bed 5 minutes ago and you were the closest, I live closest to your house, so I got your estimate, right? Like how are we representing and showing ourselves? Are we giving a nice firm handshake? Or are we doing the little floppy fist thing? Y'all know the floppy fist. You go to shake someone's hand and their hand just like collapses. Like, I'm not saying you got to crush their hand. Like I know Gene's got some big, strong hands. You ain't got to crush them, but a nice firm handshake. Look them directly in the eye. Because here's the deal. Everything that you do, you're either building trust and confidence or you're taking it away, right? So the last thing you want to do right out of the gate from that beginning process is take away from the confidence, because they're going to decide, and I mentioned this to you guys in Tampa, studies show anywhere from 30 to 2 minutes, 30 seconds to 2 minutes, that the client is going to decide in that first 2 minutes whether they want to do business with you or not, right? So you have a very short window of time. If we don't win right out of the gate with that handshake, the eye contact, being confident, polite, smiling, like all that's just setting yourself up to win. Now, does that mean you're going to close every deal? No, but it means we're at least setting ourselves up, right? We're setting ourselves up for success versus if we do the opposite, again, that's going to be taking away confidence from both ourselves, but also from our customer. If we don't look like a professional, we don't act like a professional, then they're not going to have confidence in making a decision today. And I can tell you, most people have made a lot of very poor choices when it comes to their finances. So sometimes they say no because they lack the confidence in themselves to make a good decision. So part of that is we can let them borrow our confidence that this is the right decision. It's a good decision. We're the best. We have the best solution to their problem. But it all starts right there at the beginning. We have to be true professionals, eye contact, handshake, smiling, and really start that process off very strong to allow yourself a chance to hopefully do the rest of your job very well and actually book the job and close the deal at the end of the day. So number 4, be a professional.
All right. So with 5, and hopefully you're starting to see here, so many customers have already made the decision before they even booked the inquiry with us, right? Whether that be a junk job, whether that be a move estimate, they've already made the decision in their minds. As far as how much we really affect that number, it's smaller than we think. But that said, when we do get an objection, most of the time, and we'll talk about this in the mechanics of it, it's not at all what it really is, right? They're uncertain about something. Usually it's us and how we showed up and how we carried ourselves and conducted ourselves and represented the company. Because again, these people, these clients, they have very, very high standards. So if we can't even get in the ballpark of those standards, we got to be honest with ourselves that, hey, we play a bigger factor in this thing than we think we do. And again, it's more about, anybody seen the movie Hitch? Yeah, it's okay. So watch it if you haven't. Top 5, Will Smith, fantastic movie. Teach you a lot about dating and the psychology of it all. But one thing that he says, he's a dating coach. He's talking to Kevin James, the character, and he's saying that she already agreed to go out with you, meaning it is not your job to make her like you. It's your job not to mess it up. And that's what we are out there to do. We're there not to mess it up. They already have a lot of, think of all the great reviews that we have, all the reputation, all the standing in the community, especially in these markets. We've been around forever, right? In Jersey, in DC, in Tampa, in New York, we've been around forever. So when people are calling us, they're already calling with a predisposed notion that these people are good enough. But if we show up and we give an impression that the alternative is the case, forget it. Not going to happen, right? But the good news is we can impact that by controlling how we're showing up. So number 5, when we're thinking about all this, some of you might be thinking that, oh man, I got to change, everything about myself and I got to do all this and I got to pretend to be this and that. No, absolutely not. What you don't want to do is we want to avoid what's called performance mode. Okay. You still have to be you, plain and simple. You still got to be you. Because if you show up and you sound like you're pretending to be somebody that you're not, people can sniff that out from a mile away. And people don't trust people that are pretending to be something that they're not, or the perception of that, right? So you got to be clear with yourself that how do I show up as the best possible version of me as I am today? What does that look like? And focus on doing that every single time. Don't change who you are. If you ever get on, whatever, you're around somebody that maybe answers the phone with someone in particular in their life, and they get on the phone and they sound like completely like, who was that? Like, what was that call? Like, oh yeah, no, it was whatever, it was my grandma or whatever. And so, you're trying to put on Mr. Goody Two Shoes or whatever. You don't want to do that. Okay. You still got to be you. All right. You still got to be authentic. You still got to be yourself. That said, showing up as the best version of you, but your voice shouldn't change dramatically. Hey, Mrs. Jones, how you doing today? All right, so reason I'm here is to do blah, 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 blah. Nah, Mrs. Jones not going to like that. We still got to be us, still got to be honest, right? We still got to be authentic, but just watch this, because this is what naturally happens with especially with newer sales folks. Anybody that doesn't have a heavy background in sales, you naturally think that you've got to radically change the way that you are, or you have to have like a performance mode, presentation mode. No, you don't. Again, we just want to focus on putting the best possible version of me out in front of everybody, and then that will carry us through the day. 6?
Yes, sir. We all have a BS meter internally that tells us when people are being real and authentic and when people are not being authentic. So don't think that you're some magical salesperson that can like turn that on and off, and clients won't be able to tell, because they will. So definitely a very good point. So next step, number 6, is preparation. Okay. So we've got to do some prep work. I can't just show up to these jobs blind and then try to figure out everything from when we get into the estimate, right? So we need to do some prep work ahead of time. And this goes for everything. Like, prep work for this meeting. Me and Dan spent an hour going through, like, what does this look like? Detailing out each one of these steps, right? So everything that you do, if you want to be excellent at it and you want to be the best, it's going to take some preparation. You can't just show up on game day and think, okay, I'm going to be great, if you didn't put in a week's worth of practice ahead of time, watching the game film. That's obviously a sports analogy, but for us, what does that practice and watching the game film look like for us? I think a couple of different things is, and we've mentioned a few of them already, but are you practicing? Are you role playing your script? Are you ready? Are you warm, ready to go live? Or are you coming into the estimate cold, right? So you got to prepare yourself mentally and physically. But we also need to do our homework on the job. Have we listened to the call from the SLC that's coming in for this job? Have we listened for what's important? Any of the factors that are already been mentioned? Because it's one thing to show up and have a client repeat to you half the things they told to the SLC. It's another level to show up and say, yeah, I was listening to that call. I heard you mention that the China cabinet was really valuable and really, really important to you. Or I remember you saying that there was a really long walk at the destination. Or, can you tell me exactly like how long are we looking at?